Problematic. Here's how it'll go. I'm going to start it with asking each of you. Stephanie, Blink
Yes.
182. Problematic.
Yes.
Jake, Blink 182. Problematic.
I don't know if I'm supposed to explain here at all, but I'm gonna just say baseline. Yes, definitely.
Okay, so it sounds like I'm the dissenting voice here.
What?
But I would have to. There are some caveats for me. Like I would say most definitely, but like with some reservations. But you're no.
What I'll say is they've done nothing to actively promote positive relationships between men and women and the queer community. They haven't actively done anything positive, but I don't think that they have actively been a problematic group of people.
Disagree.
But so the discussion is open. So anyone have Exhibit A?
When you first brought this up and brought the idea, the first thing that I thought of was that I remember as a kid about Blink 182 was the album cover with the nurse on it.
The state, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I just researched that a little bit, and essentially, to me, it's just an image sexualizing and objectifying a woman who happens at the time to be a well-known adult film star. And the name Blink 182 is on her like little nurse outfit directly next to her cleavage. So like that's where you're drawn to look at, and it just became like an iconic image, but you just recognize Blink 182 because you looked at this woman's breasts.
And I mean, just to, I think, bounce off of Enema of the State, that's got some of their like most fucked up songs on it, because they're not really joke songs like Dumpweed. You know, it's I Need a Girl That I Can Train.
Yes.
Yeah, Tom DeLonge has talked about that song. He said, and he sounds like a fucking idiot when he's describing how he wrote this song. I'll talk about, I guess, later why I think that maybe they're okay, but there are some like straight up, no, this is problematic. But when he's talking about this song, he's saying, I was looking at my dog thinking how great it is that you can train a dog, you can teach it to sit and do all that, but you can't do that to a lady because then she becomes a woman and that's a different creature completely. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but like this is pretty spot on. He's like,
that's similar, yeah.
It's just like this dream I had. And like, yeah, he sounds like a fucking idiot. And the song is just, about wanting to have a relationship that he is in complete control over. So, strike one for problematic.
What I would say, absolutely, the concept of wanting to train a girl is problematic when contextualized in a pattern of behavior. Jake, I think that example you gave, and I do want to reiterate again, because I'm just the dissenting voice here. I don't think that they've done anything actively to promote positive relationships between the sexes or gender identity. So they're not good people here. But for the sake of the dissenting voice, I don't think that song particularly is problematic in the sense that it's problematic in the sense that is a social norm. Like, I get that there's a power dynamic between men and women with the male-dominated consciousness, but at the same time, relationships in our culture kind of have that toxicity embedded in them. And so it's not to say that I think we should normalize that as being not problematic, but in the case of like holding what Tom DeLonge was like 26, 27 when he wrote that, like, do you hold a 26 or 27-year-old accountable for a problematic perception of relationships that they themselves were socialized into being normalized to? But that lyric specifically, because like a good point you made too, Jake, because Stephanie asked, Stephanie wasn't a big Blink-182 fan. She asked if all their songs were jokes.
And I mean, I think that's like a big part of how you look at this band is, are they a joke or not?
Yeah.
Right. And I think, especially with that album, it's, you know, being the nerd that I am, like, listened to tons of interviews, and like that album was kind of like a definitive moment for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like before that, their albums were ridden with shit joke songs, and then Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, the album afterwards, had some joke songs, but Enema of the State was like them trying to redefine themselves as serious because they just got this big record deal. And I think a lot of the context about Blink 182 comes from their live show. Like who the band really is. Their live show is where you get to know them. And that's kind of where I base most of my critique from, is because they're just like, think Louis C.K., Norm Macdonald kind of shock jock kind of humor. It's not. I think it's probably going to be difficult for people to hear through the names that I just said. I don't think shock jock comedy. I don't think this. I don't think that inherently is problematic, especially in like the art form. So like the shit that they said on stage, you know, like I think the fact that most of it was sensitive, like obviously they made some fucked up jokes, but they weren't ever like, I don't get the sense that they're aggressive.
I got a quote from Mark Hoppus that I found. He said this when he was 27. Says, I think PC is awful. But we don't disrespect women more than men. We make fun of everybody. We're not racist, we're not sexist, and we're not homophobic. We yell out, show us your tits, but we also ask guys to drop their pants. I think 95% of the kids get the joke. And I do think that's like a lens that it is kind of important to look at it as like they're trying to be anti-conformist and make people uncomfortable. The old stuck up rich white people that they grew up in their suburbs, who just the idea of homosexuality was, you know, kind of revolting to them. So I think that I don't think that's an excuse, because, you know, there's some definitely some homophobic jokes and songs that you just can't ignore. But through the lens of like, you know, or how often are they actually punching down versus just, I don't think the homosexuals are their targets for the joke. I think it's people that are uncomfortable with that.
That's interesting.
The homosexuality, I think, so the problematic part about it, because I've had this thought before consciously, like you said, I don't think they're punching down. They don't target homosexuals, but homosexuals are the butt of the joke.
Right.
And that's like, being homosexual is funny. Ha ha ha. Like that's the problematic nature, is that they find humor just in the sexuality of same-sex relationships. You made the point about them being, you know, these bougie, you know, San Diego, Californian kind of yuppies. I think we also need to contextualize that with them thinking that they're also punk. You know, like listening to interviews with Tom DeLonge talk about his teenage years, and like I do think that they had experiences like with skateboard culture, which exposes you to some like corporatized punk culture, but like that's San Diego, dude. San Diego. Like I have a hard time believing any kind of like integral punk can come from San Diego, California.
Yeah.
Maybe like the Garbage Man's kid or whatever, you know? Garbage person, excuse me.
It's interesting that you Jake, that you brought up that point about we don't just ask girls to show us their tits thing, because one of the things that I found was this article from Spin from 1999, and it was like, it went and interviewed them and talked to them on Warped Tour, and when they were on Warped Tour, it's a quote, they said, show us your tits, and like a bunch of teenage girls showed them their tits, but it's interesting that you said the perspective that you did. In this article, they didn't say the thing to the guys, but to drop their pants or anything. But
Yeah.
then they said, we're going to play a slow one now because I want more blowjobs. Mark Hoppus said that. And then they just went and kept playing their songs. But I found that, like, deeply disturbing and, you know, fucked up and promoting rape culture. But I don't know much about the band and, like, about their jokes and trying to be nonconformist in that sense. So I know that I'm looking at it just from, like, a research angle, and finding things like that are like, oh, that doesn't make you look good.
Mm-hmm.
But you said something like that at a show. You could not, I would hope, you could not do that now. Like, people would be like, shut the fuck up.
I think it's a matter of the crowd, you know? Like, I think that lots of bands I think there are lots of bands that kind of have that built into their imagery, really. Like, part of, like, the rock tough culture now is kind of infused and mixed with, it's like this hybrid of, like, hip-hop. Like, the edge of punk and hip-hop are, like, synchronized now. And, like, that's really, like, a really sexualized culture. And I don't think that
I think it just, I mean, to that point, MGK is that gross. I think he does, like, do the whole show me your tits thing. And isn't he, like, best friends with Blink-182 now? I don't think I'm
I know
crazy about
they just did a quarantine video.
Yeah, okay.
With and Travis Barker was playing drums for that cover. To break this down, saying to show your tits. Again, I'm coming from this perspective of kind of maybe a hedonistic point of view, but I don't know that it's problematic as far as consent is involved. You know what I mean?
You don't
like,
think that there's a power dynamic there?
Well, let me say there's a power dynamic.
Is it the responsibility of the viewer to take how they mean if it's a joke or not, or is it the responsibility of them to? And I mean, I don't really know about.
Yeah.
Here's what I would offer up. I would have you think about. Okay, so from a hedonist perspective is I don't think that you can regulate. What you want to regulate is immoral behavior. And I don't know that it's immoral to say in public fashion, show us your tits. Now, if they were to say, those two girls to our dressing room, and then after the show, in private, show us your tits, that's where I think it becomes, immoral. That's where I think a line is breached, because whatever your interpretation is of them doing that in public, obviously we have some opinions here. You're given the opportunity to make that judgment in, a public forum. They say that in public, and thus you can make whatever assessment you want about that.
Sure.
It's what happens in closed off rooms or, in the dressing room that I think that kind of behavior becomes, because I don't know that I'm comfortable saying that it's problematic for a group of young people wanting to explore sexuality. I'm not going to deny the power dynamic.
Sure.
But there's a power dynamic between every man and their sexual partners.
And you made an interesting point specifically when you said there's nothing wrong with a group of young people wanting to explore their sexuality. So what happens when they're old now, like they're old dudes, and they still write songs for high schoolers? I mean, I don't think they say show us your tits anymore, but like that would be kind of weird because it's a bunch of young kids now and they're old dudes.
So I would say Blink-182, the band. So I guess we're maybe a little late. Me and Jake both being fan kids growing up. Blink-182 was over in like 2006.
Okay, I didn't know.
I include neighborhoods. There's a little bit of neighborhoods. Yeah, because now what I would say, they're very intentional about their public image, because now it's a legacy business culture. Like Mark Hoppus and Travis Barker kept this thing going because it's their bread and butter.
Do they do the same shit still? Do they do that like dick sucking, fart jokes, banging your mom? Do they still do all that?
Yeah.
So let me say, up until 2015, about 2015 is when Tom DeLonge left again. Tom DeLonge and Mark Hoppus did have a dynamic similar to their earlier antics, but I was saying this is what gave me the idea about this show. I watched some footage of Tom DeLonge doing one of those acoustic medleys he's been doing with the Angels and Airwaves tour, and he's telling this story about when he was in high school, and he was talking about it was just him asking this girl out on a date, and he said, I don't know what the context was specifically, but he's getting ready to say, I wanted her to suck my dick, but instead he says, I wanted her to suck my toes. And then he says, I've really been trying to watch what I say since Me Too. It's really got us all thinking about our behavior differently. Like, makes that, and that's what instigated this thought process. Like, wow, that's actually interesting. Tom DeLonge vocally recognizing he had to change his behavior because of a cultural moment. And so, that's a long tangent from up until when they got reunited to 2015 when Tom left the band. They had similar antics, but it was more like, I'm horny, Mark, or, I'm gonna fuck my wife, or, just like, it wasn't, they weren't talking about fucking babies, because they used to say shit like that. They used to say, well, fuck babies, or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, they have the dog fucking song, they...
And if you hear Tom DeLonge talk about it, like, he understands, the legacy and the cultural significance of Blink-182. So he treats it like, I want to say, like a trademark. Like, it's the way he views the flag. I think he kind of feels the same way about
like
Blink-182. Yes. And so, but after he left with Matt Skiba now, honestly, it's just like, I don't know, Jake probably would relate to it. When we first started playing in bands and like being the pop punk kids, we both come from like these church upbringings. So like, you're trying to be edgy, but you also don't want to get kicked out of school or your parents to disown you. So like, you say silly fart jokes or whatever, and you think it's real edgy because maybe you say fuck or damn, but you're never actively like, you're not trying to push any buttons, really. You're just trying to get cool kid points, and that's what Blink-182 is now. It's a cheesy fart joke bullshit kind of presentation.
Well, and I mean, I think the other thing is that's kind of interesting, and that I think is a little bit of defensive then, is you like really got to look about like how they came up. They really blew up in the 90s when we were just in a time of popularized objectification. Like, they were in American Pie. I feel like
yes, I saw that
themselves. They are American Pie, kind of, and so of course they're going to have this kind of shtick. But end of the day, you also get the feeling that they're fucking losers. They're not actually these tough guys who, are perpetuating this idea because I feel like there is a certain amount of, if you like Blink-182, you were in on the joke.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Jake, because that's really all that I know is that little time period of like the 90s, because I saw that they were in American Pie, the Enema of the State CD came out, and to me, like you kind of said, maybe they're like losers making fun of this you gotta have sex all the time culture, because the thing that was problematic to me was, if you're perpetuating this idea of like you have to have sex to be cool, you gotta be having sex all the time, like that puts pressure on guys to like always be having sex all the time, and it's not helpful in promoting healthy relationships.
I think it's true. It's an accurate representation. And then I would say, is it then fair to say that participants, i.e., Blink 182, Mark, Tom, and Travis, should be held accountable for being problematic? They're just as participatory as we are. Specifically speaking, with the music, if they are in fact problematic, I think it's because we're all problematic.
Yeah.
Because I think that what is problematic about them is the influence culture had in socializing who they are as people. And who they are as people was congruent with myself. Like, I connected strongly with Blink 182 as a young teenager into, like I was saying yesterday, I think I was 24, and I remember hearing Nobody Likes You When You're 23, and I was like, he was like 29 when he wrote that, and I'm 24 now, and that's weird to me.
Did you know any like girls that liked Blink-182?
My first girlfriend in high school, we were in a band together, and she loved Blink 182. Like, that was kind of a a
The
shared
album cover,
interest.
didn't it bother her?
So, I mean, these were different times. She was a feminist and kind of planted those seeds for myself, but the group we were surrounded by wasn't really receptive to that. So, like, I think it was really hard for her to like be vocal in in a way to credit to I mean, I think if anyone watches what we're doing right now and they like Blink 182, they'll be offended by a lot of shit we've said, but even more so in those times. So honestly, I don't know if she personally felt resistance to the imagery or whatnot. But we had a shared passion for the music. So this is Josie. This is like the first big hit, if you want to call it that. So it starts off with my girlfriend takes me home when I'm too drunk to drive. And she doesn't get all jealous when I hang out with the guys. And she laughs at my dumb jokes when no one does. And she brings Mexican food from sombreros just because. So the impression I'm getting from their first hit single is that my girlfriend serves me in a way that my mother used to.
Although, like, in that song, though, there's some, like, I think that this song is a little bit, maybe, I don't want to say it's more genuine, but I do think it's a reflection of their, like, I think it's less of an act, and this is less of a joke song than a lot of their other songs. RN Independent, I don't think she needs me quite half as much as I know I need her. I wonder why there's not another guy that she'd prefer. All in all, this song is probably their least offensive song.
Well, I think so. Like, I noticed those lyrics, but when paired with that last half, I don't think she needs me quite as much as I know I need her. I wonder why there's another guy she'd prefer. I think that just for me, the line, she's so smart and independent, I don't think that she needs me. That's a great line if it wasn't followed up with more of that, but I kind of want another mom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like needing, I can speak to, how this music kind of cultivated who I was and helped socialize how I approached relationships. Like, I was that person, you know what I mean? Like, being needy and such. And like, now the way I would view a relationship, like, that's just so disgusting to me to like put that kind of pressure onto another person. Like, I need you to be this maternal or paternal figure. I do think it was probably meant to be. And it's kind of an insight to like how they think being like feminist or like pro-woman. Their view of pro-women is like, dude, I don't want to push a chick around, man. Like, I kind of want her to just do what she wants and like take care of me.
The song Boyer off Dude Ranch is just about someone stalking and spying on a woman. So that's fun. The point of this song is like, most of these songs are fucking jokes. I think that when you get down to it, like most of their relationships, what they want to do are hold hands and dance. Like, there is a good chunk of their romantic songs that are like extremely fucking cheesy and like,
yeah,
they don't know how much they are legitimately promoting this hyper masculine kind of gross homophobic. Well, like they do that, and that does not abstain them from that completely. But I think it is pretty obvious that it's not genuine. So I think if you're in on the joke and you're paying attention and you kind of actually know these people a little bit more, I think it has a different layer to why they're doing it. But on the other side of that, if you're just looking at them, they are just telling a bunch of disgusting, gross jokes and singing songs about fucking dogs. And
yeah,
so I think it's not really clear. I think the concept of problematic is like, well, where are you coming from and how are you viewing it? Blink-182 did offer like a home to a lot of fucking kind of those loser kids, like I fell so deeply into this band when I was a teenager. And like it did make me ignore and even like perpetuate and think that kind of humor was funny and good. And that's, and so that's where the problem comes in. It's like, they are influential and they even influence me to want to be that edgy kind of, but there is part of me that, why were they doing that though? Was it to piss off conservative types of people? Were they getting up on MTV and all the Small Things music video is mocking pop culture and the boy bands and like all these things. Like they were trying to be kind of the anti-boy band in some ways. And like, is that a little punk rock? Maybe. I'm not.
You're on MTV.
Blink is a fucking punk band. I'm not trying to say that, but
I would say
like
I would say they're punk enough. They're punk enough to have influenced. They were my gateway drug. Like I started listening to MXPX, and that got me into Blink because I really liked the simplicity, and I just started playing guitar. And from Blink-182 was, that's where I was in. Like, I don't know that I wouldn't have found like Rock Against Bush, which would have led to, finding politically motivated punk rock, or like Kevin Devine, like politically infused, like emotional rock. Like, it really was, before Blink-182, I was just listening to radio bullshit. And not to say that, they were obviously a part of that radio bullshit. But, I mean, you have Lost Prophets, whose singer was banging little babies. Or the Red Hot Chili Peppers raped someone in a closet. I think Blink-182 is only as problematic as we all are. What's problematic right now is a bunch of people, this idea that humanity is a virus and COVID-19 is this, the earth fighting back against the virus of humanity. And there's that cliche of, the memes of this being eco-fascism, but I just think it's problematic to be that stupid to not understand that pollution is caused by the 1% fucking oligarchs and not some fucking African tribe who just are building community.
It's fucked up that we still have to have people working in grocery stores, or just working at all. I think It is not fucking worth losing your life over. I know that sucks because we do need to have systems put in place to where we can get resources, food, like all that's important, and so it has to be facilitated somehow. in like massive scales. But it just seems really fucked up. But also with that, a bunch of people are going on strike today. So by the time we put this out, it will be over. But it's just important that people like are paying attention and not crossing the fucking picket line.
I find it very problematic that no one gives a shit that there's a sexual assault claim against Joe Biden. Tara Reid, is that how you say her name?
And
I think so.
I think
that no one gives a shit about that.
Women, I think, step forward too about sexual assault claims against him. Like, it's a lot. I mean, you know, how could we not fucking be mad about that? That's hypocritical. Yeah. Like, if I'm gonna be mad that Donald Trump said I can grab him by the pussy, I can do whatever I want, I have to be mad about that too. And obviously, I'll be fair. I will look for any excuse to hate Joe Biden because I already fucking do. But this is a valid one. Like, come the fuck on.
Fuck on.
Well, I think that's an interesting place to maybe like tie in where we got to with Blink-182 in that the issue with Joe Biden is that this is the assessment they're making. I don't know that anyone thinks Tara Reid, I think, if we're saying this right, I don't think even the establishment types, I don't know that the implication is that she's lying. No. It's that they're making a calculated decision that even if Joe Biden did do this behavior, that Joe Biden would still be a better solution to the current political spectrum replacing Donald Trump. And that's where you get into, and that, so that's where we have to, as a culture, take responsibility for this ambiguity we've created in a morality. Even if we didn't have the Tara Reid story, and it was just the endless amount of videos of him being weird and sniffing hair and shit. You know what I mean? Like
rubbing backs.
Right. That is when Donald Trump said, I'll contextualize it. It's grotesque what he said, so people focus on the words. When he said grab him by the pussy, what he was saying is, dude, chicks like celebrity. And there's not much anyone can do if you've got power and access and privilege. And Jake, I would challenge you to go sniff some random person's hair and see if someone doesn't say, what the fuck? And it's and it's because you don't have power or privilege to dictate those terms. But if you have power and privilege, what Donald Trump was saying is you can grab them by the pussy. And so, like, when you take the story of Tara Reid, it sounds like that's what Joe Biden did. Went up to her and grabbed her by the pussy because, like, I'm Joe Biden. You want that? They want that. You know what I mean?
That's what he told her.
Yeah,
he said, dude, I heard you liked me.
And so the point I would make is, and that, to kind of bring it full circle, if Blink-182 is problematic, it's only because the people who would tell us they are problematic are voting for Joe Biden.
I think yeah. Blink-182 is not the cause, but like they contributed though. I mean, I still don't think we can really ignore that completely. I think they were just like going with what was popular though, in a lot of ways. It did get them notoriety and attention. And so why wouldn't you ride that out when you want to be on MTV? So yeah.
I mean, think about
wanting to be on MTV. So like that throws them out of being, I think, a credible band in any way. But they did offer a lot to me as a teenager, and so I wasn't homophobic, and so I can't feel like I really think that the average listener took it that way. And I don't know if that abstains them from their sins at all.
In closing, all of the evidence is on the table. Stephanie, Blink-182, canceled or not?
I would still cancel them.
Okay. Jake?
Sorry.
I think they and it might be just because I'm still clinging on to that nostalgia. I still think they're a little bit too important to completely cancel, but
Sure.
I do think we can say they're problematic. I think
Problematic.
you did, and they kind of did create that or helped create that early 2000s weirdo alt kid scene that I do think was ultimately beneficial to music, to culture. But yeah, they're problematic, and so more or less can be canceled. I do not sit around all day listening to Blink-182 still, and if you do, I think that's weird.
My closing statement would be, I agree that, of course, there was problematic behavior in the legacy of Blink-182, but I think that we've found a consensus that whatever problematic behavior was there is the result of being socialized in an environment and in a society that breeds problematic behavior.
Yeah.
I don't think that they actively punch down to any marginalized group of people. And to, sum up what Jake's point was there closing, I think they kind of canceled themselves. I think they became irrelevant. There is a legacy to the experience of Blink-182, and Mark, Travis, and Matt are out there, getting $100 a night tickets, fucking whoring that shit out. So I think they canceled themselves, and if they weren't canceled, I think we cancel it for them, because they're fucking shitty now. Their fucking music sucks anyway.
On the next Problematic.